Welcome to another episode of Tech Leaders Unplugged. Today we're going to be getting unplugged with Joseph Shorter, CTO at FluidGenius and a few other companies that we'll talk about in his current list of things to do. Topic's going to be software delivery, get it right. And we're going to talk about software development teams, team management, and especially in this remote world we have of remote working. It can be particularly a challenge to bring software development teams together. And we're a couple of years in, and I think things are getting smoothed out. But we'll have Joseph share a little bit of his experience in working with distributed teams and trying to get delivery and keeping productivity up. So thank you very much, Joseph, for showing up today with us. Appreciate your time and your experience that you'll share with the team here. Let's talk a little bit about your background and then a little bit about companies that we'll be talking about today that you work with.
Sure. So, hello everyone. Joe Shorter. I taught myself software. I started teaching myself how to code at the age of 11, and that's what kicked off my love of, hey, this is really cool. I can tell the computer to do a thing and it'll just do it. So that started my journey. I am a software engineer, software developer by trade. And my career has been along that path for quite a bit of time. And then I got into doing large implementations for Fortune 500 companies when I joined PricewaterhouseCoopers. The consulting side, I was there for the first 8 to 9 years as a senior engineer, and then I switched and started doing management consulting and implementing large systems with big teams, cross industry types of things, from healthcare to logistics to travel and airline, uh, just a lot of topics. So that's how I ended up getting here at that time. I didn't want to travel as much as it was. I decided to find something a little taking me away from my family, and I ended up at Digital Turbine 4 years ago. And at Digital Turbine, I came on as the enterprise architect and the VP of platform architecture. I while there, I did a few things. What's important is I had under me a couple of different departments that's not typical of the role description. One was I took on product owners under me. I took on data engineering and security. So I was responsible for a pretty large portion of the technology organization for a time there. But now I am the CTO of FluidGenius. We are a digital publishing company, and I do that with my wonderful wife, that we're kind of relaunching now. So that's a kind of a quick go of my background there.
Great, great. So let's talk a little bit about the topic at hand, software delivery, getting it right. And obviously, it's a very broad topic. There's so many aspects that can go wrong when you're trying to release software, whether it's technical aspects or identifying good resources, all kinds of things that can cause projects to have delays. And very very high percentage of projects do struggle to meet their financial goals and quality goals and meet scope. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts in this area. And yeah.
Yeah. So I want to. This is a topic that's near and dear to me as a software engineer and someone who has played almost every role in the delivery process throughout my career. What I have noticed is that it's not done right quite often, more often than not. And when you are on a high performing team, it seems to be very exceptional. And in today's world, you can't be a company that doesn't rely on some type of software platform that either you build or sell yourself, or you at least rely on to run your organization. So this has become more and more important, and especially in the world of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and everyone wanting to figure out how can we make the machine code for us, because would that be better? Uh, all of this is more relevant than it probably has ever been. So, what are my thoughts? Um, I have to lay a bit of foundational context here. So, again, I told you how I became an engineer, what sparked my journey. But there are two words that I often use: software engineer and software developer, and they're used interchangeably these days because I don't think it really started off as an engineering with an engineering perspective. Back in the day when everyone decided, hey, I can do software development. I don't have to go to school. I can earn great money. I can just jump in, and if I can figure out how to do this thing, it's awesome, right? But there's a lot when you think about engineering. You think about very strict outcomes. There's a lot of rules. You know precisely what you're doing, precisely what the outcome should be, and if you don't have it, you don't hit those outcomes. The engineering failed. Not necessarily has been the case in software development. There's a bit of art that has been injected in it, and because of the art, there's been also a bit of chaos. How do we do it right? How do we take a feature description from the business from the product and actually give them what they ask for? um, how do you even translate that we even know or they know what they're asking for? All of these complications began to seep into this industry that we all love and affect the outcome of the features that we build. And so that's what I want to talk about, those foundations, why it's important. Hopefully you understand now a little bit more why it's important to get it right, because everything we do today basically relies on software. So it's more important now for business outcomes, profitability, quite frankly, safety, that we start to get this. We do better at this.
Right, right. And so what I'm hearing here is I come from a mechanical engineering background, so quite different. But then I moved into software 25 years ago or so. So, within the physical realm of creating things, that's why engineering, whether it be civil engineering, electrical engineering, all of these things often include safety.
Mhm.
And so that being first and foremost when you build products, and then secondly, the science that goes behind that. Originally,
Yeah,
engineering was really that as a practice is really applying science to solve, problems for mankind, right? And that's really what the tie-in is
exactly.
for engineering. And if you just jump into software development, although it's a great need and a skill set, there is a piece of rigor to the engineering for the safety aspects. And I think, oftentimes you'll have civil engineering projects where you have a few professional engineers, but you have many other engineers that never took that extra exam, right? So
Right.
there is that kind of scenario as well in the physical world of creation. And when you're, of course, cutting metal and making things, there can be scrap in the corner of the room where the garbage and the screw up was, and in the intangible of the software, you don't have quite that same physical scrap pile when you screw up. So I've always, I just bring that in to the context because I played in the physical world for a long time,
Yeah.
and when I moved to the civil software world, I was like, hey, where's the idea of defects and scrap? There just isn't. But in the physical world, it
Yeah.
is a huge problem. I mean, when you're running stuff off the assembly line and you missed some parameters, quality assurance parameters, you got to melt all that stuff down if you can even do that. So
Right.
um,
Well,
anyway,
well,
so
it's
I
funny. It's
appreciate you.
funny, Wade. It's actually funny because that's changed now, right? Think about
Mhm,
self-driving cars. Think about the how software operates our physical world now more than it has
mhm,
ever done.
mhm,
So now to your point, right, that the quality aspects of the software that we build are much more important. Um,
mhm,
they literally, it's the software that now operates the door on an airplane,
mhm,
potentially, right? It's the software in the Tesla or the other EV that you're driving that does a lot of scanning around and applying brakes automatically for you, or speeding up the car, or changing lanes based on software. Sure, it uses instruments, but the software is in control. So the quality of the stuff that we build is so much more important than it used to be, because you say, well, it's not rocket science. No one's going to die if I mess up this piece of code. Well, not necessarily true anymore. So that's why I say this is important. And there's a lot of organizations that don't that haven't gotten the understanding that software, building high performing engineering teams, is as tied to what is the culture of software delivery in their organization as much as the quality of the output that comes. Meaning, if you're a company that happens to be lucky enough to get all the best engineers in the world together, and they just are just awesome, they don't make many mistakes. Every company, every executive in a company wants that company to outlive them. So how do you replace that talent? How do you recreate that type of proficiency, that type of skill, in leadership, in delivering software that's going to continue building the products of the future for your organization? It's the culture, and the culture has to be a culture that is zeroed in on, we're following the best practice of software. We have actual metrics that we produce, that we measure, to say we're doing good or we're not doing good. There's a lot of it's interesting because a lot of startups will say, well, we just need to get the thing out there, we don't need to do as much testing, it's not as important. Except for, when do you ever get the chance to actually do it the way you would do it if you were an engineer, because you're rapidly growing? So that's just a lack of planning. It's not that the software cycle, the delivery cycle, is too slow for what the business cycle it is. It's a lack of planning. You need to think about, what are you building, and if and what you put out, is it going to perform the things that you actually want it to do, and no more? Because it becomes more and more important, especially as the pace goes faster. If you don't have that culture, if you don't have that mindset from the beginning, it's extremely hard to get it later. So anyway, take a pause.
Definitely agree. Definitely agree. Um, well, let's move into some questions around some of this development process, and get your thoughts around this. So, how do you prioritize the features? So that's obviously early in the development process. With product roadmaps, CX, UX, all of those kinds of things that figure in. What factors play a crucial role in your decision making process that helps drive that team?
Sure. So there's this concept of, we want to be a product led organization for people producing products. There's essentially two opposite poles of thinking here. Well, I shouldn't say of thinking, of where priorities come from. One is, you built a platform. That platform must be maintained. It is because, as the business, every day the business exists, the software oftentimes has new requirements that were never designed in initially. So you have to maintain, you have to ensure that the technical fit of the thing that you built last year, 2 years, or purchased from a merger, is it a good technical fit? If Is it part of a critical system that actually runs your business? Because if that critical system goes down or is problematic, what does that do to your business? How much does it hurt you? Right. So there's this idea of priorities have to come from maintaining the platform and ensuring that it is actually performing, it's scalable, it's doing all the things we expect to do in terms of supporting our business. And then there's the product side, where if you have customers out there that rely on your product, uh, y- you should be an expert in the industry of the thing you sell. You should know what features your end users, your stakeholders want, before they know to ask for them. Because if you don't, basically you're failing your company in a pretty big way. Because you should know the product, you should know the industry, and ways to gain that knowledge and become more of an expert is to build like a customer advisory board, where you're seeking that input constantly and getting ahead of the curve, understanding what emerging tech is out there that could complement what you do, so that you can be ahead of the curve and say, I my our company, our platform is superior. It's desired because we really focus on what works, what the users want, and the outcomes that we expect are the outcomes that we actually get. We outperform where our own expectations. So I know that was a very long answer, but hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, and so I know we talked about products that are actually released from a company to a customer base. But a huge portion of the software that's built is never sees a customer base. It's
Hmm.
internal apps.
Exactly.
And maybe talk a little bit about your experience of the attention or lack thereof of those early phases in building software for your internal employees to use.
That's a good. That I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is, to your point, often neglected.
Mhm.
We build crappy user interfaces. We just focus on, does it function or not. And when it, I we you have, I think everybody who's listening to this, yourself included, you've met that employee of a company that works on this very, very complicated spreadsheet because they had to export data from all these systems to get functionality that did not exist
Yep.
for them to operate, and they become a critical resource because they know, have all the knowledge, and to make the cogs in the wheel continue to go. Right,
Mhm.
that is a symptom that you're probably not paying a lot of attention to your internal platforms. You should treat them the same way, with the same rigor around, are you happy? And the real point here is that, are you asking your stakeholders at all, does it work? Are they happy with it? Are there features they would want? Again, all of this culture that I'm talking about, this excellence toward, I'm going to build a thing and I'm expected to perform the way I built it. Um, there should be a pride in doing that, and that pride should lead you to say, I want to make sure, everything I produce, the person using it, consuming that, is getting the best experience out of it, whether it's internal or external. Because oftentimes those internal systems are just as critical in operating your organization as a product is to be sold. So you can't ignore it. And oftentimes that's exactly what happens. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Right, right. And that's been I've built a lot more systems for internal business use than external customer facing and platforms. Although I've built both, they've I found that when I've usually come in, I worked for Accenture for many years, so much like you, managed services, consulting services. You come into enterprises. I think I had 100 applications that I was managing, and they were every kind of application for the last
Mhm.
really 30 years, and had to keep them maintained, add functionality where we could. And it was clear that the UIs just weren't given the same attention, because there's not a G2 or some other site for people to complain,
Right.
or a Yelp to complain when it's an internal app. It's just people just, curse under their breath about, the application not doing it or being slow or all those things. And yeah, it's an unfortunate part of sometimes the way things are built. All right. So, can you share a little more insights about the team handles challenges about scalability? A lot of the platforms we built, they're built with a certain size in mind, and if they become very successful, you can't just always throw hardware at it. So, tell me a
That's
little bit
true.
about scalability and some of the platform decisions you've had to make over the years.
Sorry, that is a great question, because that brings in another aspect of software delivery that oftentimes organizations don't see the importance of. They feel like it's built into the engineering discipline, and it's not. And what I'm talking about is architecture, and oftentimes enterprise architecture. The reason why I'm saying enterprise architecture is because the goal of enterprise architecture is to understand the strategic objectives of the company, and turn those and connect those as strategic objectives into what are the long-term architectures required to support the technology that we're going to build to meet those objectives. So we have to build tactical execution plans to get there, right? Oftentimes interim architectures along the way to that path. But the point here is that all of those, when you think that way, you're thinking about, wow, not just the scalability today, but I based my architecture on the 5-year roadmap or the plan of the North Star the company has. What are we trying to achieve? I need to ensure that my architecture, the scalability, all those things can be at least refactored easily to get there, if not needed right now. Right? You have to think through those processes. And the reason why the architecture point is really important is because, as an engineer, I'm not concerned about the future. I'm concerned about today. I'm concerned about the scalability today. Concerned about creating the feature that I was asked to create on time,
Mhm.
and hopefully perform it the way that it's expected to perform today. Because they don't there's just not a lot of time on your plate to think about anything else. When you can get it, you have probably a senior engineer as a technology, kind of a technology architect as your senior engineer, and that's great that they can build some of that in. But again, should be done on purpose. It shouldn't be done by accident. So that's how you build for scalability in the future. Also, the architecture of your systems should be changeable and modular in a way that if you need to scale a part of your platform, it doesn't require that you have to scale everything at the same time, right? That you can attack those things in an autonomous way, so to speak.
Right, right. And then, to the architecture, that's obviously the growth of the microservices architectures over the kind of the more monolithic service oriented stuff where maybe have a lot less interfaces but more complex. Those become much more harder to scale from a performance standpoint, obviously. All
Yeah.
right.
So sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. You wanted to ask me
Yeah, I was
something.
just going to say, so, for architecture, that's critical in the scalability part. So I'm glad you brought up the enterprise architecture piece. Okay, so we talked a little bit about teams and cultures in this post-COVID world we live in. I think a lot of companies experienced remote teams at huge amounts for the first time in the COVID era. I've been dealing with offshore teams for 20 plus years. When India started to kind of build out that capability, I think that was around late 90s for me. And so I wanted to see how you've been working with the cross-functional collaboration of teams and trying to work that cultural aspect, especially with geographically teams. You're bringing in cultures from Asia, Europe, Eastern Europe, Latin America. It's very common now to have 5 or 6 cultural regions of the world that are very different on how they respond and talk to each other and
Yeah.
communicate things that need to improve. And sometimes, tell me a little bit about how you tried to work a common culture across those geographically dispersed teams.
Sure. So this is less of a technology problem and more of just a general management thing,
Mhm.
leadership problem. Um, and it's a problem because just again, for setting context, it becomes a problem mostly because managers are not great at managing people. We're good at managing projects and hopefully deadlines. People, not so much. So we don't on purpose talk to them. We don't on purpose build this collaboration. So I believe collaboration should be on purpose. We should schedule it. It shouldn't be just assumed it will happen. So you take like disciplines, you put them together, you have them purposely meet on a regular basis to talk about what are you doing, what am I doing, what are cool things to share. So because that's the point of commonality across cultures, no matter where you live, of the thing that I'm actually interested in and I can talk about. So that's one way to connect uh, uh, different cultures into. We're doing software delivery. So let's talk about this thing. You're Java engineer, developer. Let's talk about the Java, right? So first build those things on common. Respect um, the times, right? Because oftentimes you're in different time zones. So you got to find a way to work around and share the load. You can't say everybody has to work on US time all the time. What you'll find is that that causes a strain for others. And it doesn't even feel right to them. So you have to figure out how to create a balance there. Um, but again, the other thing is understand what I had. One of the things I learned, because I also had to work with all the same regions that you talked about on my teams, all at the same time. What I had to learn was that if my engineer is in India, they have a different approach to their career than say if the engineer is in China or in Argentina or uh, 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 in the European Union somewhere, right? So understand what are they here to be an engineer, they just happen to be good because they want to go do something else, and I'm only going to have this much time, so I need to figure out how to maximize that time. Are they the type of engineers that say, if you tell me to do a thing, you got to give me very explicit directions on exactly what you want, because I'm not going to put a lot of imagination into it. As a manager, as a manager, you need to understand that for every person that works for you, so that you can effectively manage the outcomes of the things that you're asking them to get done. Does that help? Does that make
Yes,
sense?
yes, great points. Yeah, and yeah, I agree with all that. The not only the cultural aspects, but even within those cultures, there's individual aspects, and if you've had more than one kid, you know that every kid in your family is different, and
Slightly
they
different,
do
yeah.
sometimes they require different. Not that I'm trying to equate software developers to kids, but it is a very emotional tie that we have to have. That we can actually extend those experiences into the workplace and understand and appreciate the differences and actually use them synergistically to where some people are more specific in their outputs and others want to be more creative. In fact, they don't want to be told what to do. You
Mhm.
can't apply the same thing, and you got to understand each of those work elements. All right, so I wanted to take a quick pivot away. I like to talk about a personal journey of each of my guests. And I noticed as I was going through your resume, um, and we've been talking very technical about software development. I noticed that you pivoted away. We talked about your digital media product. Tell me a little bit about. I mean, obviously you do this with your wife, so there was that aspect. But tell me a little bit about um, what is in the digital media world that really kind of drew you to spend time over there. And I know the other company, the Digital Turban company, is about ads, so it's still a little bit more on the media and advertising side as well. Tell me a little bit about that shift away from the hardcore stuff at PwC.
Yeah, sure. So, if you ever taken one of those personality tests, like the Myers-Briggs, it'll tell you what type of personality are you. Usually contain two, right? Or they'll tell you you are more logical, and or this much logical, this much creative. For me, I'm literally 50-50, right? So I've always been that way. And what I mean by that is, I'm a painter, I'm an artist, I'm an author of a book. Um, and it's always been a part of things I also like to do. Right. The reason why like software engineering is because I got to create a thing that people thought was valuable and used. It's the same way with digital media or art. I get to create something that people appreciate on the other side, and it makes me have a self value and worth for that, and seeing that. So how did that whole thing start? It's actually been there for a while. In fact, my wife, she's a dancer, and when we started moving around doing consulting a lot, she had to close her dance studio down, and she wanted to not lose ties to dance and fitness. So we created a digital publication. It became global. She got to meet some really cool people from the fashion industry, the entertainment industry, actors, and it was a great way for her to build a brand around those specific spaces. Since we had come to Austin 4 years ago, we kind of shut all that down. My wife, we spent more focus on our kids as they were getting older and things like that, and now we were like, you know what? There's a need here that we could see this platform. What we do has a lot of different use cases. We like producing creative content, so let's go do it in earnest. Um, at the end of the day, I work for my wife, and husbands out there, you know exactly what I mean. It's a hard job, but it's also fulfilling. Wink, wink. Um, and it doesn't take up all my time. So is it is the full time thing I'm doing? No, you can also see I volunteer as a CTO of Veterans Matters, a nonprofit organization. Um, and but for now, we are going to we're going to launch this. We're launching this business now. We're going to scale it and see, how far can we take it, and see if I really want to get back into the hardcore stuff. And I kind of haven't left that either. So just for clarity, I just passed my Google Cloud Architect exam. I am now doing studies in artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'm a part of the UT program, the 6-month immersive program for doing that. So I haven't left the technology world because it's as much of a love to me there as it is art and things that are creative. Um, but yeah, hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, I think I would probably fall in line very much with the way you did that. Came, out to California originally for music, and uh, came across, web programming in 1995. It was all by hand. Couldn't even play an audio file in a
Really?
browser at the time. But as a musician, producing artists and fighting the music industry to get people produced and signed to labels and stuff, I basically shifted out, of the traditional music industry and put all my passion into technology for the arts. And it is well, we all know how the music industry and the effects of the internet to that went. It completely restructured the whole
Yeah.
distribution and delivery and marketing of music. And so, um, but yeah, that's the thing, when you're an artist, that you never lose that. And when you can apply the two and become that much more efficient and diversified, I think it's just more satisfying as well for both sides, right?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, so I think we're getting at the top of the hour here. Thank you for your time. I wanted to just announce that next week's guest is Lane Campbell, principal of GovSoft. Topic's going to be AI enhancement coming to the DMV. We all want to have the DMV get a little bit faster. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can apply software, particularly into that space. All right. Thanks again, Joe, for a great conversation. I always love talking tech and software development, always learning something new, and appreciate your time, definitely. So,
Thank you so much, Wade. I appreciate being on. Look forward to maybe we'll pick another topic next time. I have plenty to talk about.
right. And I'm just up in the Dallas area. So maybe I'll just swing down there to Austin and see what you got going on down there, too.
That'd be awesome. That'd be
There's
awesome.
always some good bands playing there on 6th Street. Okay. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon. Everybody
Thank you.
next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.